Today's guest is Dr. Tracey Woodruff, a scientific researcher and professor who's dedicated her career to uncovering environmental determinants of disease and health inequities. Dr. Woodruff's research explores the ways in which harmful chemicals and pollutants impact our health. We're chatting with her all about her recent findings and more. This is Advocate Now. Well, Dr. Woodruff, you're a professor at UC San Francisco in the Department of OBGYN, and your work seeks to uncover how harmful chemicals can impact health and pregnancy. What first drew you to this line of work?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I guess one thing I really am concerned about is how pregnant people and children can be highly affected and actually get sick from toxic chemicals. And the thing that's really been driving a lot of my work is the fact that we're seeing that pregnancy and child health is actually adverse conditions are increasing. So we're seeing more kids with neurodevelopmental outcomes, more kids with metabolic disorders like diabetes. That was never an issue with children until, the last 10 to 20 years. And then also that these conditions adversely or more adversely impact children of color and low-income children. And so the fact that these conditions have been increasing is really concerning. And one other factor that has been increasing at the same time is our use of various and many chemicals in various products in our environment. So things that may pollute the air or pollute the water or pollute our food, but also are in products like personal care products and cleaning products and items that you use in the home. So we're all exposed to many different types of chemicals that are increasingly being produced and manufactured in the United States. And so we're really devoted to uncovering, identifying, and preventing those chemical exposures as a contributor to adverse health and health inequities. So it's really all about prevention for us.
I want to talk about one of those chemicals. PFOA is just one of the many modern day chemicals found in the blood of a majority of Americans, and it's been linked to autoimmune disorders like autism and some cancers. First of all, what exactly is PFOA and where is it usually found?
So PFOA is a member of the family called, their acronym is PFAS, perfluoroalkyl substances. And these are chemicals, you might know them as Teflon chemicals. So they've been used as, they were touted in the 1940s as a miracle chemical. They've been used as a non-stick chemical in many different applications. So think of a Teflon pan, non-stick garments, non-stick carpet. They've been used in food wrappers. So, to keep grease off of French fries, for example. They're even found in dental floss. So they're used in many different types of applications. And they also have a property such that they don't break down. In the environment very readily. So they get out, they hang around, and then we get exposed to them, whether we breathe them, we drink them, they're in the food supply, and then been measured up to 100% of people in the United States and globally, and in places where they don't even make PFAS. So, birds, fish, polar bears, etc., all have some of these chemicals of PFAS. And so that's why it's really a concern, because A, we're all exposed to them, B, they can hang around for a long time, and C, as you mentioned, they can adversely influence health. And people who are developing, so like the developing fetus or children, can be uniquely or more susceptible to these exposures.
Yeah, through your research, you actually discovered the average woman in the US has enough PFOA in her body to account for an ounce decrease in the birth weight of her offspring. Can you take us through the dangers of that?
Yes, this is some work that we did very early on. Back actually was really interesting. We were developing a new method for how to evaluate evidence, and we thought we would test it on PFOA because EPA had not so recently announced a phase out. This was well before people knew really extensively about all the health harms of PFOA, and that's because 3M and DuPont had covered it up for many years. So we knew that there were a lot of studies looking at pregnancy exposures to PFOA, and and whether babies were born too small. So we developed this approach to look across all the studies and aggregate the information. And what we found, both from animal studies and human studies, but the animal studies were interesting. People had studied this in chickens, fish, fruit flies, and of course mice and rats, which are more typical in these studies. And pretty much universally, higher exposures to PFAS resulted in lower birth weight babies. So your question was, that was a long way to answer your question, which was that why does low birth weight matter? Well, babies, it's not that low birth weight is an illness in itself, but it's symptomatic of something that's happened during fetal development that's caused the baby not to fully develop. And then that can lead to increased risk of many different types of health conditions later in life.
And PFOA, or PFOA as you refer to it, isn't the only chemical, of course, with dangerous effects on newborns. I mean, premature babies in intensive care units appear to have higher amounts of plastic chemicals as well, right? What causes that?
Well, you know, the modern approach, we now have this capacity to save much younger babies who are born much too early. However, what happens is they're put in what's called a neonatal intensive care unit, which is appropriate because they're very difficult for them to survive on their own. But there's a lot of components to this, what's also known as the NICU, components to that contain plastics. So there's the plastic feeding tube, there's the plastic around the infant. And so studies have shown that the chemicals, in particular, these types of phthalates that are in the tubes, and their function is to make the tubes more flexible, can increase exposures to the infants. And we know that some of these phthalates can increase the risks because they can disrupt the endocrine system. They disrupt androgens or testosterone, and they can increase, these phthalates have been shown in other studies to lead to adverse effects, for example, on male reproductive development. So it is possible except in the NICU, for some of these phthalates, there has been a move to replace some of the more toxic phthalates, but they still are using other types of plastic. So it's the challenge is that there's a lot of plastic being used in the NICU. And then, I mean, of course, there's a lot of trade-offs because it's really important for the health and growth of that child. But there hasn't really been an emphasis on what are the aspects of the NICU that we might be able to not use plastic, for example. And so I think that's where we need to be thinking about is where can we, what is essential, but what is replaceable also.
Well, in terms of preventative care, I mean, how can pregnant women specifically best ensure that they're keeping themselves and their babies as safe as possible? And even on a larger scale, what can we all do to shift this?
I mean, some of them are very easy, like don't microwave in plastic. Even if you get takeout containers that are in plastic, put them in ceramic, take out food. Try and eat more food that you prepare in the home. Studies show that food prepared in the home, so you buy the ingredients, prepare them in the home, have less chemicals than takeout food. You can clean with less toxic cleaning products. You can use that are cheaper. So, vinegar and baking soda are great solutions. You can take off your shoes before you come in the house. That also can reduce the amount of dust and stuff coming in from the outside. Chemicals do love to hang around in dust. So, a HEPA vacuum filter and a microcloth are also great ways to pick up those chemicals. So we have all these tips on our website for people, and with a sheet that says, here's things that you can do to avoid toxic chemicals. And the other thing we recommend, it's really important, is that because we can't control a lot of these chemicals, right? We can't control air pollution, and we can't really control water pollution. So we really need, and we don't even know where all these chemicals are being used. So you can't even necessarily go to the store and know that you're not buying toxic chemicals. So we really need the government to do its job to require disclosure, and that chemicals that are not known to be safe are eliminated from the marketplace.
Well, it all starts with raising awareness and informing people. So we thank you for all the work that you're doing, Dr. Woodruff, and thank you for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks so much for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, just head to advocate.com or advocatechannel.com.